As we speak, Hurricane Andrew has passed south and west of New Orleans, still packing 140-mile-per-hour winds and heading northwest. The killer storm already stands in terms of property damage as the most destructive natural disaster in U.S. history, with damage estimates for southern Florida now put it between $15 and $20 billion. The question, where will Andrew strike next? These shots, taken about 9 p.m. Eastern Time, show scenes around Houma, Louisiana. That's about 50 miles southwest of New Orleans. And as you can see, there's a lot of wind and a lot of rain. There's a foretaste of what may be in store later this evening. Not too many people. Residents have taken to higher ground to wait out the storm. And standing by now live is Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. Bob, everybody wants to know where it's going to hit and when. What can you tell us?
Well, Jane, is getting very close to the coastline. In fact, the eye wall of the storm, and that's the strongest part of the storm, is right on the coast right now, just to the southwest of New Orleans. Morgan City sets right up in here, and the eye wall will pass over that area within the next about 3 to 4 hours.
And what does that mean for how wide an area? How much of the Louisiana coastline there can expect to take some serious punishment?
Well, this swath of damage is going to be somewhere around 40 to 50 miles wide as that storm moves across there, just as it was here in South Florida.
You expect that, what, to be about 20 miles either side of Morgan City if your prediction now holds?
Yes, and primarily on the right side there in this case, with the wind circulating around the hurricane like this. So Morgan City here, certainly the Lafayette, Louisiana area has some major problems ahead of it based on our course here.
How dangerous is this storm now?
It's still almost the same intensity as it was when it passed across here in South Florida.
With the potential for perhaps a higher storm surge?
The storm surge is about 12 to 14 feet. Now, that's one of the good things because it's moving nearly parallel to the coast. The maximum surge was back in here. As the center goes along, the winds around behind the hurricane will be coming from the south, so this area will experience about somewhere around 12 to 14 feet.
So it's going to be a long and rough night for the area.
Right
Bob
on
Sheets,
through the nighttime, yes.
You bet. Thank you very much. We'll keep you updated. Stone?
Well, Jane, Dateline's John Scott has been on the Louisiana coast since early this afternoon. He is standing by live right now in Houma, Louisiana. And John, it seems like you're just about due north of Andrew out there in the Gulf. What's the scene along the coast right now?
Due north is just exactly right, Stone. He's about, according to Dr. Sheets, 30 miles directly behind my back, and the eye is looking right at us. It is windy here. It is rainy, although not as bad as it has been earlier in the evening. I would say that everybody here is nervously waiting and hoping he skirts by us, but I can tell you that we are going to get a whale of a storm here, even if the eye of the storm passes west to us, as Dr. Sheets says it will.
John, you heard Dr. Sheets mention Morgan City as the place where the hurricane will move over land. Where are you relative to Morgan City?
We're about 30 miles due east of there. In fact, we drove through Morgan City on our way here a few hours ago, and it's virtually a ghost town to see it from the street. Everybody is hunkered down inside their houses and shelters and so forth.
How much of Houma has been evacuated at this point?
It is difficult to say. The Red Cross's best estimate is about 3,000 people of a population of maybe 60,000. So a lot of people have chosen to weather this one out right here, either at home or in the shelters.
John, one word about Florida. You live in southern Florida. You were there yesterday when Andrew moved through. The damage estimates are almost unbelievable. $15–20 billion. Can you describe the damage that you saw?
It's really impossible to describe, Stone. You hear words tossed around as a war zone, the area being a war zone, that the destruction is unbelievable. We can't really find words to describe what happened in certain parts of Dade County, parts of South Florida. Where I was perhaps 30 miles away from the worst of the storm, and it was frightening there. It could be just as bad here tonight.
Okay. John Scott, thank you. John Scott in Houma, Louisiana.
Saturday.
Again, we'll have more on Hurricane Andrew later in the hour. But now a story of unnatural violence. The case and confessions of a female serial killer. Over the last few decades, America has seen a steady stream of serial killers. Murderers who strike again and again without apparent motive. Often, as in recent cases in Seattle and Los Angeles, their victims are prostitutes. In our story tonight, the roles are reversed. Stone?
Aileen Wuornos is a self-described prostitute who admits killing a number of middle-aged men, most of them married. Despite the brutality of her crimes, her case has received little national attention. Watch Michele Gillen's two-part report, and you may never forget Aileen Wuornos. And we should tell you going in, some of her descriptions are quite graphic.
Across Central Florida, amid the traffic of tourists making their way to Disney World, a hitchhiking prostitute named Aileen Wuornos spent her days and nights selling sex to men.
I was going out with a whole lot of men. I was going out with hundreds, maybe thousands.
For 7 of those men, the ride with Aileen Wuornos was fatal. After she propositioned them and in some cases had sex with them, she shot and killed them.
We look at women as being frail. This woman's not frail. This is probably the meanest woman I ever met in my life.
The FBI calls her the first female serial killer, comparing her to men who have killed stranger after stranger again and again over months or years. But Wuornos is a woman, and she says she killed to protect herself. You say you are not a serial killer.
I'm not a serial killer, and I'm not a murderer. I know that when I die, I'm going to heaven, and I'm going to have Jesus right beside me. And I'm going to have them on Judgment Day in front of me, and they're going to pay for their wrongdoing. I am innocent. It was self-defense.
The legal system didn't believe you.
I do not regret it. I do not regret it. They were going to kill me. I killed them. That is a normal thing to do. It's a human thing. I did the right thing, or I wouldn't be here today.
Our interview with Aileen Wuornos on death row was her first since receiving 4 death sentences. She now stands to become the first woman in Florida to be put to death by the state since 1840. What made this 36-year-old woman a killer? Why does she have no remorse? Who is Aileen Wuornos? Her world was a highway punctuated by truck stops, a woman living among roadmen, drifters, and transients. Her path of violence began in December 1989. Her first victim, Richard Mallory, a 52-year-old TV repairman. Cause of death, 4 bullet wounds. June 1990, 6 months later, David Spears. His truck abandoned. He was found nude with 6 bullet wounds. A week later, Charles Cascadon, en route to his fiance's house, his body dumped in the woods, shot 9 times.
The witnesses told us they saw.
Sergeant Robert Douglas was on the task force formed to stop the killings in Central Florida. What evidence began to emerge?
Well, it's just about an overkill in every one. They were shot multiple times. They were robbed. They were left in secluded areas for days and days on end.
It was 7 months after the killing started that police got their first break. Missionary Peter Sims disappeared in June 1990. Then his car was involved in a crash. In the car, 2 women. It was on this road that you first got the clue that the serial killer you were looking for was a woman.
That's true. What happened was they were traveling on this road right here.
Coming around this bend.
Coming around this corner, traveling through here, ran off the road, hit this gate, went through the gate on into these bushes here, where when the car came to a stop, they got out, took the tag off, started wiping it down, took some belongings that they had in there, and beat feet down the road.
Witnesses saw the 2 women running. One was later identified as Aileen Wuornos. A sketch of Wuornos was posted around Florida, but 3 more men would be murdered on the highway. Again, the victims were middle-aged white men, all shot with a .22 caliber pistol. Wuornos says the 7 men she killed threatened, raped, or attempted to rape her.
I was raped, tormented, badly. And I'm sitting on death row for defending myself, justifiable homicide.
You're explaining now that these men were abusive in your opinion. You understand that for many people, because you were a prostitute, they don't understand how a prostitute can be raped.
I don't understand how nobody can understand that how a prostitute can be raped. Because when a man rapes a woman, he assaults your whole body. He puts his down your throat, cramming it down your throat. He tears your hair out of your head. He beats your face in. He rips your wide open.
Police traced Wuornos to Daytona Beach, where witnesses recognized the sketch. She was hiding out at the Fairview Motel, drinking heavily. In January 1991, 13 months after the first killing, police arrested Wuornos. The hunt for her was over, but the search to understand what made her a killer was just beginning. Aileen Wuornos spent her last night of freedom here at the Last Resort Bar. She slept on a couch. She'd been living on and off the streets since she was a child. How young were you when you first began prostituting?
16.
Why did you do it the first time?
I was on the road. I was a teenager, homeless.
Wuornos had run away from home after having a child at age 14, which she was forced to give up for adoption. She worked the roads for sex and money.
I made a lot of friends, and I loved it. I loved it. I
wanted friends.
Yeah, I loved the social communication. I loved the sex. I loved the fun we had. I loved the communication we had. I liked the friendship.
Do you understand that for some people, they would find that strange? In other words, that they couldn't imagine getting love and attention in that way.
I don't understand what's so strange about it. You just made a bunch of friends, so what?
At birth, Wuornos' mother gave her up to be raised by her grandparents in this house. Her mother disappeared from her life. Her father was jailed for raping a child and committed suicide in prison.
Well, I heard that he raped a 7-year-old girl, and so I didn't really care. He raped a little girl and killed her, and it didn't. Anybody who rapes, to me, is a sick, deranged piece of puke that doesn't even deserve to live.
Wuornos says her grandfather beat her and that she was raped as a child by a friend of the family. Shockingly, she is convinced she is not affected by her childhood.
Because I really did take my past and just throw it in the river. I mean, I never thought I never dwelt on my past. Every day was a new day for me.
Do you think that you didn't want to dwell on it because it represented something ugly for you?
Well, maybe that could be. That could be. I didn't like my childhood, that's true. But I didn't dwell on it. It didn't mess my life up.
Psychologist Dr. Elizabeth McMahon met with Wuornos for over a year. She says Wuornos' childhood did affect her deeply, filling her with rage and crippling her emotionally. Here's her evaluation of Aileen Wuornos. She calls her Lee.
That Lee is one of the most primitive individuals I've ever met. By that I mean that she is probably at the level of about a 3 or 4 year old child emotionally.
There are many people who were abused as children, who were raped. They don't pick up a gun and kill. What's the difference?
My sense is Lee strikes out at everybody. And is angry at everybody, feels betrayed by everybody, cannot figure out how the world operates, that there's a whole set of rules out there that everybody else knows about and Lee doesn't.
That set of rules came crashing down on a rainy December night in 1989. Aileen Wuornos had been carrying a gun for 6 months. Now, within her unstable mind, anger at her childhood abuse collided with rage at sexual assault. Richard Mallory drove her to this secluded area off the highway. It was here that Aileen Wuornos became a killer. Wuornos says Mallory told her he would pay for sex and then refused to. When she tried to leave, she says he tied her up and repeatedly raped her.
He said, you better do what I say or I'm going to kill you. He said, it doesn't matter to me. Your body will still be warm. I'll kill you right now. I'll screw you later.
But then Wuornos says she turned the tables. He untied her, she got her gun, and shot him 4 times. Well, let me ask you, in your opinion, did Richard Mallory deserve to die?
Okay. For what he did to me, the way he tortured me and everything, yes. Yes, he did. But, how can I explain this? Yes, he did deserve to die, but the way I left him was so kind, because the way he was going to leave me, I'm sure, would not have been this way. He would have left me probably dismembered, scattered out in the woods.
So you feel...
I left him with a rug over him so the vultures wouldn't get him.
But you left him dead.
That's right.
This violent encounter would change Aileen Wuornos forever. She would now respond with a gun to those she says assaulted her, to those who reneged on paying for sex.
The day I met Richard Mallory, the way he sexually abused me, I said to myself, I said, if anybody ever comes up to me again and ever tries to rape me like that, he will definitely wish he had not met this prostitute.
But I gotta ask you, one case, you claim rape, you say I shot him in self-defense. But 7 killings?
It wasn't every day. I was out prostituting, and I was dealing with hundreds and hundreds of guys. You got a jerk that's going to come along and try to rape me, I'm going to fight.
But you don't blow people away. You blew them away.
Oh, jeez.
But most prostitutes encounter some kind of
Yeah, what
violence.
do? They get killed or something then?
Some do.
No. I don't believe in that. I believe in everybody has a right to self-defend themselves. I don't care who you are.
Do you realize that what you did was
No,
wrong?
and I'm getting sick and tired of the families, too. Now, I've got a message for the families, okay? Here's a message for the families. You owe me. Your husband raped me violently, Mallory and Carskadden, and the other 5 tried, and I went through a heck of a fight to win. You owe me, not me owe you.
You killed a loved one.
So, they almost killed me. Who's supposed to die? It's a battle. That's the way it is. That's life. You got a battle going between life and death. Whoever wins, more power to you. I mean, that is the way it is. That's life.
No matter what your reaction to Aileen Wuornos, there is this question. How did she come to commit these crimes? So when we come back, a window on the tortured private world of Aileen Wuornos. And you'll meet her lover, whose act of betrayal set the stage for the arrest and conviction of Wuornos. Michele's report continues in a moment.
In the trial of Aileen Wuornos, this woman provided key testimony. She's the lover of Wuornos, and she tells her story to Michele Gillen when Dateline continues.
We continue now with the case of Aileen Wuornos, the woman the FBI has called America's first female serial killer. Her 7 victims, all middle-aged men. Wuornos claims she killed in self-defense. How then did she get 4 death sentences against her?
Well, the answer in part lies with another woman you're about to meet, Aileen Wuornos' female lover. She knows Wuornos better than anyone, and as you'll see, when authorities wanted a confession out of Wuornos, they used her lover as bait. Michele Gillen picks up the story.
There is a side to Aileen Wuornos only one person knows. A woman who moved with her from motel to trailer park to motel. A woman who was in love with Aileen Wuornos and lived with her during the killings. Her name is Tyra Moore.
Living with her for 4.5 years, I know her better than I think anyone else does. And I think she's very intelligent.
What attracted you to Lee Wuornos?
She was very caring. She cared a lot about me. I cared a lot about her.
Moore, for the first time, tells of their life together, a life that began 3 years before the first murder. She says she came to Florida in 1985 to escape the suburban life of her parents' home in the Midwest. 6 years younger than Wuornos, the two met at Daytona's Zodiac Bar and became inseparable. But something changed, something that would make Tyra Moore decide to lead Wuornos toward the electric chair. The bizarre story begins in December 1989, on the night Wuornos, killed for the first time, came home and told her lover.
I shot and killed a man that day, is what she told me. And I definitely didn't want to believe her because she was acting so normal. I mean, it was like, it didn't bother her at that time.
But did you believe her?
After a certain point, yes, I did. She later cried after she had thought about what she had done. It seemed like it bothered her that she had done it.
Incredibly, Moore says she thought the killing would exorcise Wuornos of her rage.
One of the reasons that I didn't come forward and tell anybody was because I was hoping that, that would change her attitude towards life, that all her hatred had gotten out, and that, she would change.
During the fall of 1990, the two lived in this motel room, Wuornos leaving weekly to prostitute on the highways. Moore says Wuornos was often drinking, often angry.
How did you deal with anger when you felt anger?
I wasn't an angry person. Tyra ripped a t-shirt off of me, man. She beat up a guy in a bar and I had to break it up and everything else. I wasn't an angry...
But I see anger today when we talk about these men.
Because, a year and a half, nothing but people choking you to death saying, hey, you're a prostitute, we want you to die, man. We don't give a damn, we're going to make a whole lot of money off of you, man. We don't care about you and that you were almost dead and all this other... I'm pissed.
When she would come home from all these tricks, would she ever express anger, towards men? I mean, did she like men?
No, she didn't. She said she hated them. That's why I couldn't understand how she could go out and have sex with them to make money, as much as she hated them.
The police search got bigger and closer to home. Remember the crashed car that gave police their break? Moore had been the driver. She now saw the car on local news reports and learned it belonged to one of the victims.
You had been in that car?
Yes, I had.
Moore's love was turning to fear, but she still didn't call police.
Probably at that time I was more scared. If I did, she would hurt me. And I did still care about her a lot.
By the time police arrested Wuornos in Daytona Beach in January 1991, Moore had left her. But the police needed Moore to make their case against Wuornos. They tracked her down and brought her to this motel. They told Moore she was a suspect, that to clear her name, she had to convince Aileen Wuornos to confess. Moore decided she would betray her love for Wuornos. While a police tape recorder rolled and a police officer sat at Moore's side, she spoke by phone 11 times to Wuornos. Moore even threatened suicide to convince her.
I love you a lot. I don't know whether I should keep on living or if I should... No, Ty, listen. Ty, listen. What? I will cover you because you are not you're innocent. I know I am. I'm not going to let you go to jail or anything. Listen, if I have to confess, I will.
And to save Tyra Moore, she did confess. Her love was taking her towards the electric chair.
I want you to do that. You know the reason I'm confessing, too, I love her so much. I don't want to get her in trouble because she's not the one. I'm the one.
In her videotape confession, Wuornos described in chilling detail how she murdered the men she says threatened her.
He got out of traffic this. He gets her the door and he closed the door and he's coming at me like this. And I said, you better stop him. You keep shooting. And he wouldn't stop. I shot him again. And I think I hit him somewhere around here. And he fell to the ground. And I shot him in the leg.
With Moore testifying against her in court, Wuornos was convicted in the trial of her first victim, Richard Mallory. Yet today, Aileen Wuornos says she's not angry at Moore for betraying her.
Let me ask you this. You really love Tyra. Some people would say, by wanting to protect her, you confessed and you're going to go to the electric chair. You feel betrayed by Tyra?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think it's sad that she didn't say it was self-defense when she knew it was self-defense. But then again, I don't understand because, I don't know. I think the cops threatened her and said, look, you're going to get first-degree murder. You're going to go to prison the rest of your life. You might even go on death row with her.
I spoke to her yesterday.
You spoke to Tyra Moore?
Yep.
Tell me about it.
And she said to me, you smile. Some people say, why are you smiling? This is a woman who testified against you.
I still love her. I always will love her. I'll love her. I hope I see her in heaven.
Why do you still love her?
I loved her. You don't understand the love. See, people don't understand the love. They think it's not it wasn't sexual. My love was a mental thing between me and Tyra. I loved her for who she was. Although I did not know she had a two-faced heart.
But not only does Aileen Wuornos say her lover betrayed her, she claims the prosecution used that to railroad her toward the electric chair. Was she right? The issue comes down to whether the prosecution was truthful in portraying Wuornos as a woman who killed not from threat, but for thrills.
This woman was killing for the thrill of killing. She was selecting her victims at random, and she was killing whenever the opportunity and the mood coincided.
State Attorney John Tanner, who handled the Richard Mallory trial, was determined to put her on death row. He knew convincing the jury would be tough.
Well, we had to convince them to vote for death. It's difficult in any criminal case to convince a jury to vote for death regardless of the facts, but especially if the accused is a woman.
I'm thinking this guy is thinking how he's going to kill me.
To make his case, Tanner needed to discredit Aileen Wuornos' claim of self-defense. When we spoke to him after the trial, here's what he told us about the confession she had given to police detectives.
When she ultimately gave the confession to the investigating detective, the Volusia County Sheriff Horzeppa, she never once mentioned self-defense.
Not exactly. In Wuornos' full confession, she brought up self-defense again and again. We counted a total of 53 times. But despite a fight by Wuornos' lawyers, the jury was shown an edited version with Wuornos' claims of self-defense deleted. Then Tanner pulled off an extraordinary legal maneuver. He convinced the judge to let him introduce evidence of the 6 other killings Wuornos confessed to, but had not stood trial for. This cinched the death sentence and was key to getting a guilty verdict in the first place.
If you had gone in and only been allowed to argue the Richard Mallory case unto itself, were you guaranteed to win?
No. No. If we had had to try the case on simply the evidence of Mr. Mallory's killing, with her story of self-defense, of a sexual assault, brutal torture that she described, a jury would be hard-pressed to sort out the truth in that case. We certainly could have lost it.
But John Tanner got the death penalty and more. Convinced she would never get a fair trial, Wuornos' mood darkened. She stunned her lawyers by asking for the death penalty in her remaining cases. When her public defender lawyers objected, she fired them. A new lawyer, Stephen Glazer, helped her plead guilty or no contest in those cases. There were no other trials. She got the death sentence in each case.
She said, Steve, I want to get out of this. Let's get it over with. I'll save my own grief. I won't have to go from county jail to county jail. We won't be spending $10 to $20 to $30 million of taxpayers' money, and the victims' families could get at peace.
When she first looked at you and convinced you that she wanted to die and she wanted the electric chair, you cried.
I cried because I do feel somewhere in my heart, I say, Steve, are you walking her to the electric chair? Do you have a right? And isn't it your obligation to talk her out of it? I believe in her right to decide her fate. I believe in her right to choose her death.
Psychologist McMahon disagrees. She says Wuornos is too unbalanced to make such a decision.
She wants the situation, as she perceives it to be right now, to be different. And the only way she sees to do that is to request the death penalty. Does she fully understand that this means that she will die and not be here tomorrow? No. Lee doesn't understand that ramification of her statements.
McMahon has dealt with hundreds of killers. She believes that Wuornos is a special case, that she should not be put to death.
One of the things in our law is that we do not put to death children. In my clinical opinion, Lee is a child. She's chronologically an adult. She is emotionally, psychologically a child.
Shirley Humphreys, widow of Wuornos' 6th victim, says no matter why she pulled the trigger, Wuornos should pay for what she did.
She just emanated evil. No soul.
No, I said that I think she's, completely amoral.
Shirley Humphrey's husband, Charles, was a former police chief. The day after their 35th wedding anniversary, he disappeared.
What haunts you most about his final hours or minutes?
The violence, how hard he had to die. I mean, she shot him in the gut, she shot him in the heart. I have his pen and pencil back there where one bullet was deflected. She shot him 7 times. The pain that that man had to suffer is just unthinkable.
Do you believe in the death penalty?
I do now. Very definitely I do now.
Before this?
Before this, no.
But Aileen Wuornos, the woman described as an emotional child, whose rage came easily and sometimes violently, who police say will go down as the first female serial killer, now says she wants to live.
I hear from you today that you really don't want to die.
I don't want to die. I had to plead no contest because there's no sense in going through the trials that are totally unfair. Now,
Wuornos says she wants to fight her case in new trials. She is still unrepentant.
But the 7th man that you shot, did you say to yourself, I'm out of control. I'm killing people. I need help.
No, I thought to myself, those men are out of control. I'm sick and tired of those men out there thinking they can control us and do whatever they damn well please with our bodies and think they can get away with it because it's a male-dominant society and we're gonna treat you the way we want to, abuse you, treat you, destroy you. It don't matter to us because we can get away with doing that.
Just last week, Aileen Wuornos, according to her lawyer, had yet another change of heart, again saying she wants to die and die quickly. It seems to underline what psychologists have said about those mood swings of hers, even when it's a question of her own life or death. Next month, more court appearances and probable outcome to more death sentences.
Michele, if the psychologist is right, this is a woman whose emotional and moral growth was stunted at an early age. Did you get the impression sitting across from her during the interview that this was a child trapped in a woman's body?
That was exactly my take. After just the first few minutes of asking her questions, I realized I had to put my set of values and ethics, leave them at the door. Aileen Wuornos just doesn't grasp the concept that killing is wrong. She just doesn't get it. At best, she might say death and murder is sad.
And it was striking that even as she denied her rage against men, it was coming out during the interview.
Doesn't it?
How is she different from other female killers?
Well, there's a reason why the FBI has classified her as the first female serial killer. Without exception, other women who have killed repeatedly nearly always are caregivers who have a distorted sense that if they kill the elderly or sick, it's a mercy killing. Aileen Wuornos is an exception, a frightening exception.
Thank you, Michele. Much more to come. Later, an update on Hurricane Andrew. But first, with kids, maybe yours, heading back to school any day now, I'll take you inside one of the best public high schools in the country.
But now the truth is out, and the killer's identity will shock you.
His hands were bloody.
Television's most powerful drama, now at a new night and time, Law and Order, NBC Wednesday.
There's a little something for everyone on this one. The Family Values Show with comedian Larry Miller and actress Sarah Jessica Parker. Don't miss Jay tonight.
Dave might be on his best behavior with manners expert Letitia Baldridge, or he might not. Plus the music of Lyle Lovett and actor Charles Dutton, only on Late Night.
Almost 11 p.m. in the east, and Hurricane Andrew is now landing a second punch to the U.S. mainland. The eye is forecast to hit land at Morgan City, Louisiana, around 2 a.m. Dateline's John Scott is in Houma, Louisiana, about 30 miles due east of Morgan City. John, talk to us.
I don't know if you can tell, Stone, from the last time I spoke to you, but I can tell you that I'm significantly more drenched. There is a resigned sense here that the storm is coming. Everybody knows that, but I don't get the feeling that everybody wants to fear or worry about it tremendously until they see exactly where it hits and how much damage it does.
Well, John, realizing that this is at or near ground zero, what's the mood like?
I think that people here have been through major hurricanes before, unlike the part of South Florida where Andrew hit last couple of days ago. That part of Florida hasn't seen a hurricane in 25 years. Hurricanes are a more recent memory here, and people, I think, are ready for it.
Okay, John Scott in Houma, Louisiana. Thank you, John.
And that's our program for tonight. Thanks for being with us.
And to those of you along the Gulf Coast and in southern Florida, the rest of the country's pulling for you. Stay tuned to NBC for continuing coverage of Hurricane Andrew. I'm Stone Phillips.
And I'm Jane Pauley.
And for all of us here at Dateline, good night.
This is Kim Kerrigan. Coming up next on the news, a Grinnell College student missing tonight. Hurricane Andrew makes its move on the Louisiana coast, and Miss Iowa wins the Miss Teen USA pageant. These stories and much more coming up next.
For a transcript of this program, please send a $5 check or money order to NBC News Transcripts, Box 7, Livingston, New Jersey, 07039.
The Miss America pageant, Saturday, September 19th on NBC.
Next up from your 24-hour news source, New Orleans gets a calling card from Hurricane Andrew. Team coverage next.
And while Louisiana gets pounded, Iowa sees a turn to much cooler weather. I'll have details ahead.
A Waterloo teenager pulled to safety after a harrowing experience in an underground sewer.
And Illinois authorities searching for a missing Grinnell student. I'm Kathy Saltero. I'll have details.
Those stories plus Iowa's gearing up for the Kickoff Classic. Rick has that. All the day's news is coming up next.
It happened overnight. Strange changes, but there it was. Cats had taken over the Iowa lottery. It finally ended in the scratch game department, where the names of games began changing mysteriously. Now there's the newest scratch game, Fat Cat. And it's not your typical game either. It got special treatment. 4 games on each ticket, so you could win up to 4 times on a ticket. That, and a top prize of $1,000. Play, then enter your cat in the Fat Cat Lookalike contest at any Iowa lottery retailer.
You know, there's real magic in Diet Pepsi. It's got that special aha ingredient. You got the right one, baby. Okay, girls. Now, what's that magic ingredient?